Regiment, Brian Eno and David Byrne. Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman, as we turn to part 2 of my interview with Johan Galtung, known as the founder of peace studies. He's spent the past half-century pursuing nonviolent conflict resolution and international relations. His latest book is The Fall of U.S. Empire. And then what? Successors, Regionalization or Globalization, U.S. Fascism or U.S. Blossoming. I spoke to him last week about his prediction of the collapse of the U.S. empire in 10 years, he says, by 2020. In the second part of our interview, Galtung discusses his assessment of President Obama, the U.S. corporate media, and more. But we began with the war in Afghanistan, where he's worked extensively in attempts at conflict resolution.
Now let's look at it from a Washington point of view. Pursuing a victory which will never happen. I'll say why. 1.56 billion Muslims are dedicated to the idea of defending Islam when trampled upon. Some of them are traveling to Afghanistan. Some of them are doing it somewhere else, in other ways. Those ways can become quite disagreeable, as we know. Point 2. There is no capitulation in Islam to infidels. It doesn't exist. To fight against Christians and Jews, to take the mini-empire of Israel, the regional empire, is not an invitation to a violent confrontation that will end with a capitulation. In other words, the time perspective of the Muslim community is unlimited. I don't think the time perspective of Washington is unlimited. So you can say, of course, who has the longer time perspective will win. There may be some local capitulation, a white flag somewhere, but by and large the usual scenario of a tent maybe with a camping table, somebody diligently typing a couple of copies of a capitulation document and please sign on the dotted line, forget about it. Forget about it. That's not the way it happens these days. So having said that, victory is out. Of course, the U.S. will not be available for defeat, as in a sense it was in Vietnam in April 1975. So withdrawal is the likely thing, hoping desperately that the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police will take over the job, which they will, with my knowledge of the situation, not do. They will be aligning themselves with the next stage in Afghan history. But, having mentioned this, there is of course a fourth possibility. United States participating in conflict resolution. So what we have been discussing here, Amy, in Washington in these sessions have been the details of these 5 points and other points. And here I'd like to enter with a basic point about mediation. We who mediate, I'm an NGO mediator. I've done this more than 120 times around the world, sometimes with some success, sometimes not. Or, to put it more optimistically, not yet success. Okay. What we are trying to find out are the goals of the parties. What do they want? I mentioned the Taliban are dead against secularization. I find that legitimate. The U.S. goal of a base, I find it illegitimate. The U.S. goal of an oil pipeline and controlling it, I find it illegitimate, by means of war. But the U.S. goal that no attack should come from Afghanistan, I find completely legitimate. I don't think that's what happened 9/11. I don't think the attack came from Afghanistan. Nor do I think Osama bin Laden's role was very much important. I think it was essentially Saudi Arabian. It was a revenge for the oil treaty of March 1945, because it was totally against Wahhab perspectives on reality. That the good life is the life as lived at the time of the Prophet, and as the Prophet said when he expired in 632, in this country there should be no two religions. I'm of course in no way saying that all Saudi Arabians are of this opinion, but many are. Even the royal house are divided down the middle. And if you then add to this, from 1990 onwards, staging U.S. wars in the region, be it against the Saddam Hussein invading Kuwait, or be it against the Saddam Hussein, that was in 1991, February, the Saddam Hussein of 2003, 20 March by Iraqi reckoning. Staging it from Saudi Arabia, from the sacred land of the chosen people. Now, the U.S. should know something about sacred land and chosen people, the metaphor that they took from Judaism, because at the time in 1620, at the time of the Mayflower, there was not much Zion on the eastern end of the Mediterranean. So, having said that, conflict resolution is the way. But that can only happen if you understand what the people want, legitimate goals in Afghanistan, and taking into consideration what, to my mind, is an absolutely legitimate goal from Washington: no attack shall emerge from Afghanistan. Even if it didn't do so, and to the best of my knowledge, in 2001. It could do it today, because the U.S. has produced quite a lot of people who have reasons for hating the country. Now, having said that, I am not sure that the U.S. is going to do this. And the reason for it is a limited U.S. ability to see a conflict from the outside, or from above, to take your intellectual helicopter getting up above the conflict. See your own legitimacy and illegitimacy and the other side's legitimacy and illegitimacy. Starting thinking that maybe he has a point, and then trying to see, is there some reality that could accommodate all of it? Well, 243 military or political interventions since Thomas Jefferson. We are now perhaps at 245. This is not a U.S. foreign policy talent, in spite of the fact that there are so many wonderful Americans in this fantastic country that I have lived much of my life that have a fabulous ability to handle conflicts well. So having said that, we come to alternative 5 for the U.S. to become irrelevant. Neither victory, nor defeat, nor withdrawal, nor conflict resolution, becoming irrelevant. And that, of course, leads us to the question, who then is relevant? Countries in the region, Turkey. Turkey is led today by 3 people: the president, the foreign minister, and of course the prime minister. Davutoglu, Erdogan, Gül, of an exceptional quality. Our quality more in tune with what happens in the world than the people leading the United States of America at present. I'm not talking badly about Obama and Hillary Clinton. I'm just saying that those 3, it's very hard to come up to that level. Now, they are not becoming a regional power. They are now very high up on world diplomacy. They are not, as Washington Post is saying, turning against the West. They're turning against the United States and Israel, turning against the U.S. empire and the Israeli mini-empire after 1967, 43 years ago, after the occupation, after the June War. You see, all over the region you find people saying that we can tolerate, we can live with. When I talk with Hamas people and ask them, is there an Israeli you can acknowledge, you can recognize? And they say, by and large, for June 1967, with some revisions. Well, Turkey is on that side.